Welcome to Real Eyes Realize. This is a podcast where we feature everyday people making ripple effects, actualizing love in their families, communities, and in our world at large. That's why we call it Real Eyes. So we welcome each guest on the show with the intent to create positive change in our world. And as a listener, you can do so by listening and taking action in your own world. For now, sit back, relax, and enjoy. And here we go. So as we begin, wanted to say welcome to this very first episode of the Real Eyes Realize podcast. This episode is so special. This is an edition where we will journey behind the mic to get insight to the humans behind this podcast.
So here in this episode, we will explore where the idea to create a show originated. We'll learn about the spark that ignited the ripple effect of creation. We'll get to hear about how this spark has ebbed and flowed and evolved from initial creation to where it is now, and how the spark can carry us through our commitment to service and spirit. First things first, I'm Ariela. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I will be guiding us through this exploratory opportunity. In a few moments, you'll get to hear from the hosts of the show, but first I wanted to share a little bit about myself and why I felt the spark within me to join the movement. So Jess actually reached out to me, just wanting to know if I would be down to help with some social media stuff for the podcast. And once she told me more about what the podcast was actually going to be about, that's when I was like, wow, I definitely want to be a part of this project. And I was really thinking, not only because I have a background in social media, but because I wanted to actually share with audiences to hear the amazing work that, are creating real life impacts that our guests are creating in the world. And I also feel that general news and content on social media doesn't really share as much positivity and light as it should, So I feel like there's so much hate and negativity that's being shared through online content nowadays that I feel like we can really create a shift in the content that's circulated online by sharing more about these true acts of love and service. So now that I've gotten to share a little bit more about myself, I'd like to welcome the hosts of the Real Eyes Realize podcast, Christina and Jess. So now we can get to know a little bit more about them. We'll first start off with Christina. I know you felt the call to this project a few months ago and have been birthing it into form ever since. Can you share with us a little bit more about who you are? And then I'd like to hear what it's been like to bring something like this into form.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ariela. And just first of all, we're so lucky to have you part of this team. I'm Christina Enneking, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And it's very interesting where the seed for this podcast came from. It was actually beginning of 2020, and I was at a personal retreat with Carolyn Mace. And this was prior to COVID and the sheltering in place activity that we're all many are intimately familiar with. And we were having conversations around the effects of what we say in the world and how things like truth and integrity were being diluted, whether or not from the onslaught of different news outlets, lack of accountability, even an amazing amount of sharing of opinions and facts as truth. And what it really got me thinking about was, how do we shift the narrative to what it is that we commonly ingest to a point where we're actually able to see the real effects of people that are out there on the ground doing the hard work to support their communities in a positive ripple effect. And so it was funny, I was on a walk and I continued to see eyeballs everywhere. You'd see eyeballs painted on walls, and then I would go and see a tree, and in that tree trunk there was a puddle of water and there was ferns that were outlining those like beautiful eyelashes. And what really kind of came to me was the shout out, real eyes, realize truth. And I started to really lean into that thought that deception has multiple answers, yet truth has one. And so I feel like it's time for some real truth spreading.
Oh, wow. That's a great background I never heard of, the start of this podcast. Thank you so much for sharing, Christina. Tell us about the journey of inception to where Realize is now.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned giving birth, and I've been feeling these Braxton Hicks contractions in my belly. And so it does feel like it's an absolute birthing that's happening. And part of this has come about where I have led people on retreats to different places around the world. And in that, we've always met people that are on the ground that are creating ripple effects in their families and in their communities and in the society at large. And so I've been deeply curious about what is it that has gotten these individuals started? How do they continue to operate from a place of this deep personal truth and motivation that their service is really for the greater good of the overall village or the overall city or the overall family? I feel like that's tricky in what I would call the age of distraction. And I'm not alone in calling out that name, right? So even the word real started to morph into standing for something much different. And so REAL standing for the ripple effect, actualizing love. And that really is the spark that created this movement. How do we take a look at the positive ripple effects that are going on? In some cases with people's very small actions, what they might think is small, but what we realize from the village effect is it's actually the beginning of something quite large.
Wow, that was wonderful to hear. I appreciate you sharing all of that, Christina. And congrats on the realization of this becoming something of tangible form, finally. You mentioned the involvement of Jess, I believe, and how she aligns to the overall expansion of Realize podcast. So I'd like to invite Jess into the conversation now. Hi, Jess.
Hey there.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself and, how you came to co-create this with Christina and, from when she reached out or to, what inspired you. Just want to know, what was the spark that initiated you to take action?
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm so excited to be here. And my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I just want to acknowledge that excitement is an emotion that can carry you through all the ups and downs. And so that's been something that we as a team have even experienced in the short couple months, that when you decide, yes, things move, you start to see eyeballs everywhere. You start to see, these reassuring signs that, you're on the right path. And so that whole experience has been fun. Christina reached out to me and, she's one of those people that if she were to tell me, hey, we're moving to a nudist, beach in a foreign distant land, in a planet not yet discovered, I'd say, well, when do we leave? So it was, getting the call was exciting alone. And then I got to hear about all of these messages and connections and, things that were bubbling up for her, right? These sparks that were igniting her to co-create. And so she was looking for somebody to help bring to light a podcast where we could highlight, these people in the communities making these ripple effects, dedicating their lives to service and love. And what does that look like? It doesn't always look like the person on stage, right? It's the people that you see passing by, and they're committed to something that's bigger than them. And so this podcast was pitched in that way. And I was instantly interested because I think podcasting is a wonderful medium to share stories and to amplify stories and be able to get stories into ears of people that may not always have access to that info. And so, it's been a really fun kind of alignment between my interest and love for podcasting as a medium and then this perfect purpose-driven action or mission. So it was a full body yes from there.
And I just want to interject, in reaching out to Jessica, she's such a talented individual, so successful and intelligent in her own way. And, we've had some travel experiences together. We've gone to Peru and have had some amazing experiences. And there's that saying is when you just know. And so it has been a pretty amazing sensation to be able to work together and share in the sparks of creativity that is bringing this project to full fruition. And so I just wanted to give a shout out that it wouldn't be possible without collaboration. And so this is what we want this podcast to be all about as well, is how do we collaborate and partner with the individuals we'll be interviewing to hear more about their stories and how do we support them and elevate their voices. It's really important to us.
Yes, that's awesome. Thank you both for sharing. Yeah. We wanted to showcase the humans behind the mic because, from here on out, we're going to be featuring everyday people making real impact. And we're going to zoom in on how individuals are creating positive ripple effects around them. I'd love for Christina and Jess, if, y'all can maybe comment a little bit about what y'all are most excited about when thinking about the guests that will be featured on the show.
Yes, I can hardly wait. There is actually this quote from one of my favorite poets and writers, Mark Nepo, and he says, when you look with the eyes of the soul to bring you home to your heart, that is what we are interested in as we invite guests to the show. How do we look within the eyes that go deeper into this place in the soul? And how do we understand the stories so that the people that we're talking with, just by the way that they show up, is what moves us and inspires us. I'm also really interested in both Jess and I, as we've talked about the people that we want to bring onto the show. It's not all love and light, and this is, my experience, and it's all just been, I woke up one day and this was all of a sudden that I knew. What we want to get into is people that are really ready to share from a deep place of vulnerability and authenticity, what it's like to be in the muck, to feel stuck, to feel like we want to fight against systems that are holding people down, and when the odds feel stacked against you. So that's what we're interested in. How do we start to get super excited about the real stories, about real people that are making a real positive impact in this world?
Yeah, I am so excited on so many of those things that you mentioned too, Christina. That there's so many elements of the show that makes it different, makes it fun, that makes it an experience, a way to participate in the stories. And we'll get into that, more in a little bit. But the guests are by far my top of the list in terms of what I'm excited about, because like Christina mentioned, we're going to be touching on featuring stories of all kinds. And when we were reflecting on, okay, who are we going to, how are we going to make sure that this is going to be an inclusive place? We're not going to be an echo chamber. We're going to have all walks of life and background and different environments and everything that comes with complexity of being a human being, and all of that. And so I was reflecting on it a little bit more and just thinking, we can't have light without darkness. And so I really like how Christina touched on, it's not going to be just full of love and light, which that can be there, but there's always this balance, this polarity that's happening. And so finding people that aren't afraid to share from those places of vulnerability, when, the rug's been pulled out from under you, what next? How is the spark still lit? What gets it lit, relit, right? All of those things. So featuring stories from people who have committed their work in a place of love and service, and get to hear firsthand how they stay committed, even through all the ups and downs that comes with humanhood, is something I'm really excited to learn and soak up and just have a community where we can all be learning together. And so, we've got the recipe for truth here, for realness, depth, and connection. So if that's what you're into, stay tuned, stick around.
And we've kind of bopped back and forth on a couple things too. Truth is something that it is in the eye of the beholder. And so when we take a look at that, we don't take that term truth too lightly or to say that there's only one way. What we really want to do is look at the lens of how is it that people are seeing things with that sense of, how do I actually show up and be part of this human family? And what does it feel like when I'm looking at beholding truth that's going to hold true for many, many people, generations beyond the individuals that are here, even doing the hard work.
It's very true. Wow. I'm excited now to hear more about future guests and stuff, and I'll be sure to be tuning in. And I know that was one of the things that really is what I was really curious about when I first started and heard about the podcast was where will we be finding the people that will be featured on the show? How will y'all be creating an inclusive environment to ensure, a variety of voices and perspectives and backgrounds like you kind of touched on just now, Jess? So can y'all share a little bit more about, what types of criteria it is that guests will need to have to be invited on the show?
Yeah, it's interesting. Just like with any ripple, we want to start with the individuals that are at the center of their communities. And when we're looking at this platform of really having compelling and inspiring stories to share, I mean, that's one criteria, is who are the individuals that have actually been that spark, and that there has been a felt ripple effect. And so we're looking at individuals that we're aware of, but also people being able to nominate others that have been inspiring to them. We also are committed to ensuring that we have a diverse set of speakers. So one of our criteria is on diversity of our audience, and we are certainly interested in knowing how people got called to their work. So there's this humble leadership that really comes through. And so, and we're not talking about humble from the sense of humility, but this strength that comes from being in service. And we're really excited to kind of understand what happens when you're in that mode, and then the times start to get tough, and how is it that you continue to stay devoted to whatever it is that cause. And so we're going to be leaning heavily into empathy, and as I mentioned, inspiration and courage. And so those are some key themes. And it's the kind of thing that we completely know that we're going to start, and as any ripple, it's going to grow. We certainly have quite a few individuals that we've already reached out to and are excited to interview. And then we're interested to hear from our listeners as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So with so many podcast shows that are, out there in the world, tell us about how the show is different from the rest. I know that this was a key indicator when in initial creation of planning, and something, that's held close to both of your hearts. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, this was something that we talked about a lot because, like you said, Ari, there are so many podcasts to tune into, shows, things to just occupy your time. Like we mentioned earlier, the age of distraction. And so, like I mentioned, also, it's like this show is an experience. We want you to play along. We want you to participate. This isn't just a let's hit play and move on with our day kind of thing. Of course, you can do it when you're out and about, right? Listen wherever you want to be. But after listening to the show, we're going to have opportunities to interact with the stories we hear via, an online collective hub, and we'll share about that in a little too. But you're going to get resources, tools from a collective resource hub where you can start to reflect on your own life. It will help spark self-discovery and just reflecting on where the parts of the guests that you resonate with, and then things that you've learned and putting it into practice. Because we really do believe in an integrated approach. Gone are the days of mindlessly taking in just more information. No one needs just another fun fact. But, we want to embody the teachings and insights guests will graciously share with us. And so that is I think the key indicator. It's an ongoing experience, and each guest, I think we'll find builds on the last guest, and we're going to have this kind of collective wisdom that we can draw into and lean on each other for learning and moving through this thing we call life.
Absolutely. And, haven't we all listened to so many podcasts? It's a wonderful medium, first of all, to be able to dive in deeper, to hear someone's story, because it is something that we can do on a walk, before going to bed, upon waking up, working out, like whenever it's convenient. In this particular podcast, we really are looking at focusing on the person that we're spotlighting. And so we want to give that opportunity for them to just let us know about their journey. And so it'll be less Q&A at the beginning, more giving a platform for them to just really share. And we really are interested in our listeners feeling that sensation of that humble grace and also that grit in which they embody. And then we'll move into some more depth within those stories to understand what it is that they're a part of today, and how can we learn more? How can we really start to spread the word about what it is that they're doing? And that we get to, I'm so excited, we get to offer up to our listeners these everyday heroes that are in our midst. And so I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to emote, get ready to cry, to laugh, to feel, to let your heart just express wide open, because we really do believe that when we're looking at these positive ripple effects, it's something that's coming into that place that is our point at the center. our heart. And it is really inspiring that we get to learn from these individuals and understand what keeps them going. And maybe there's some part of that that continues to keep us going on whatever it is that we might be challenged with. And so that's what we're hoping for, is a beautiful ripple effect.
That's awesome. I'm so looking forward to hearing more about the guests that you all will share their stories about and all that stuff. But final question, Jess, how will listeners be able to have the chance to participate in what they listen to, what they learn, how they're feeling? What ways will they be able to build on the skills and reflect and grow in their own way?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple different ways you can interact with us on an ongoing basis. And then also for self-discovery, like I mentioned. So first things first, we're on social media, on Instagram at realize.love. We're also on Facebook. So we've got all the links in the show notes below. So just go ahead and check those out. And we look forward to connecting with you soon there. We'll have things like announcements of upcoming guests. We'll have announcements of new things we've added to the Collective Resource Hub. We'll talk about events that may be going on for our guests, or collaborations we're doing with them on a fundraiser or some kind of service-based project. So it'll be kind of real time. You want to tap into our social media channels for that, and we'll be there. We'll chat with you there too. Secondly, we're really excited about this. We've got a account through a company platform called SpeakPipe. And it's basically just an online voicemail where you get to nominate guests to come on the show. We're going to have, a really simple place on our website where you can do that. And that link is also in the show notes too. We may have this as a platform also just to share your thoughts, as another opportunity for you to reflect. And there's something special about putting it somewhere. I recorded it, I sent it in. And of course, we will for sure let you know if any of those are going to be published anywhere. But for now, it's going to be a great way that we can hear from you, hear your voice, get a sense of what's going on, and also continue to invite new diverse guests to the show. And then lastly, I mentioned earlier, we've got an online resource hub. And we're probably going to find a fun name for it. But for now, it's just the Online Collective Hub. Mm-hmm. And so this is going to be, again, worksheets or meditations or yoga videos or any kind of, additional tool that we can use in our day-to-day to help us embrace the spirit of being real and creating those ripple effects, actualizing love. And yeah, those are the main ways. And this is, again, going to evolve and grow and change with you as the listeners, as we continue to learn more about, how we can make this even bigger than what we've imagined so far. So yeah, I think with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Christina to send us on our way for now.
That's awesome. Thank you. And before we say farewell for now, we simply wanted to leave all of you with this thought, this little nugget. And it's a thought that actually is quoted, if you will, by Mother Teresa. It's actually painted on some of the walls at one of the orphanages in Calcutta. And she talks about doing small things with great love. And that's really what we're invited to take a look at for ourselves, and for having an awareness of the individuals that are consciously taking real moments to the next level and really interacting with people and finding an opportunity to be in service with others and really thriving in our communities. So we're curious about, from your perspective, who are those everyday heroes and heroines in your midst? How might you also take a look at following the spark that is within you? As just mentioned, we will have an online resource hub that are a lot of the coaching tools that I work with clients with just as well. And it's just a wonderful chance to take this to a deeper exploration. We'll have some prompts for writing so that you can really look forward to how these aspects of what we'll be listening to from our podcast interviewees are just a mirror for what's inside of us and how we can follow that spark within. So we look forward to exploring these aspects of who we are and who our listeners are and who our podcast interviewees are. We're really excited to make this really bring it from a concept in the mind to something that is a full fruition. Here we are, let's hear it and let's go for it. So until then, you can connect with us on our social channels. And as just said, our links will be in the show notes. And we just thank you so much for listening and for being here and for supporting us. We couldn't do this without you. So much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to another impactful conversation. We hope you take some time to let the wisdom and stories of those who shared sink in. We welcome you to engage with us on our social channels at realize.love on Instagram, on our Facebook page, and via our virtual voicemail SpeakPipe. Links to both those can be found in the show notes below. Also, special treat, be sure to check out our online resource hub for listeners, that's right, for you, where you can gain access to resources to support you in making your own positive ripple effects, actualizing love. Until next time, be true, be real, be you.